All right, grab your coffee, in moderation please, and let's get settled. Welcome, junior staff. I'm Dr. Damian Wolf, senior researcher here at the Foundation. Look, I've built a bit of a reputation over the last decade for completing tasks that others, frankly, deemed impossible. And just to clear the air before we begin, what I do have is a background in psychology and metaphysics, an IQ north of 186, but honestly, nothing I've analyzed in my entire tenure quite compares to the sheer metaphysical weight of what we're covering today. This explainer is a mandatory briefing on a massive, reality-bending SCP-001 file known as the Ouroboros cycle. Pay close attention, because understanding this multiversal survival protocol is absolutely critical to your continued existence here at the Foundation.
Okay, let's dive into this. The Ouroboros cycle is a massive 4-part SCP-001 collection. It was written and compiled by lead archivist DJ Cactus, and it documents a very specific, contained universal timeline. I want you to think of timeline containment kind of like a fragile glass terrarium, right? If you shake it too hard with an anomaly, the whole ecosystem shatters. Now, Ouroboros, as those of you with a background in mythology or metaphysics will already know, is the ancient symbol of the snake eating its own tail. It perfectly represents infinite destruction and recreation. And honestly, as a training tool, it is the absolute perfect metaphor for this narrative. This file evaluates the extreme, frankly terrifying lengths the Foundation will go to secure the world, and it highlights the catastrophic containment failure risks associated with immense anomalous power.
Historically, our efforts to stabilize reality, think back to the widespread Scranton reality anchor deployments of 1989, they often inadvertently feed the very chaos we're trying to contain. Ouroboros exemplifies this, just on a terrifyingly cosmic scale.
All right, starting off part 1, the children, also known as the buried weapon.
So, this proposal sets the stage for the very beginning of this whole cycle of destruction. It centers on 9 children who were transformed into a single, unbelievably powerful weapon. I'm talking about an entity capable of annihilating absolutely anything with a simple command. Just gone.
Now, the strategic risk of centralizing that much destructive capability, it was immense. But the ethical toll on the researchers managing these kids, it was absolutely devastating. It's the kind of psychological burden that ultimately caused the entire project to collapse in on itself. The head of the project mysteriously disappeared or was destroyed entirely, we're not quite sure. Today, this horrific anomaly is buried securely under immense layers of concrete in San Marco. As junior staff, you really need to understand that the things we build to protect humanity often blur the line between salvation and damnation.
Let's move to and see how this builds in Part 2, The Broken God, or the Mechanical Behemoth.
Co-authored by archivist Twisted Gears, this timeline jumps straight from a localized buried weapon to a massive mechanical monster. We're talking about an origin of the broken god. This entity is of such staggering, incomprehensible scale that it literally eats mountains whole. No joke. It appeared across Baja, Mexico, just wreaking absolute havoc on the landscape. And its sheer destructive path was only halted when the entity was ultimately annihilated by another anomaly, a massive orbital weapon known as SCP-2399. As trainees, I want you to consider the containment protocol here. How on earth do you hide a machine that eats mountains? Well, you don't. You rely on cover stories of natural disasters, and you deploy aggressive countermeasures. This teaches us the raw necessity of compartmentalized information when a threat breaches public visibility on a continental scale.
Moving right along to Part 3, Atonement, otherwise known as the Singularity.
Prepare yourselves, because the scale now jumps from planetary destruction to a literal multiversal threat. The anomaly here is a humanoid singularity who can control gravity. But the real psychological crux of this case file is that this entity is an ex-Foundation researcher. Because of their unique condition, they can actually look into the future of the multiverse. And speaking purely from my own background in metaphysics, the apocalyptic weight this entity carries is just staggering. What they see is a completely doomed future, a timeline where, very soon, there will be so many SCPs that containment becomes mathematically and physically impossible. The result? The total perishing of all universes.
Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer burden of knowledge that's presented. This entity approaches the O5 Council and offers them a deal. It will destroy every other universe to save ours and preserve humanity. But that comes at the cost of an infinite number of lives across the multiverse. And the Council, driven entirely by their prime directive to secure and protect our baseline reality, actually agrees to it. However, the entity harbors a hidden plan. It recognizes that the O5 Council members themselves are anomalous, and it secretly plans to kill them before allowing itself to be contained. For you trainees, treat this as a simulated crisis scenario in operational security. It perfectly highlights the immense danger of negotiating with reality benders and exactly why you must critically evaluate the hidden motives of anomalies that suddenly offer us miraculous solutions.
And that brings us to part 4, the way it ends, the assassination. So now we step back from those cosmic, reality-ending stakes, right back down to a systemic, targeted destruction of Foundation leadership. This is a sequence where 4 Chaos Insurgency agents systematically hunt down and assassinate every single member of the O5 Council. This systemic destruction eventually culminates in the death of O51. And once the head of the Foundation falls, the eponymous cycle resets entirely. It generates a brand new O5 Council and a completely new Chaos Insurgency to oppose them. This right here is exactly why maintaining morale and strict operational security under O5 Council mandates is so vital. As junior staff, you must prioritize absolute discretion regarding O5 leadership identities. In fact, as a quick practice exercise today, I want you to review standard communication logs and identify 3 potential informational leaks that could expose high command. We keep these secrets not for the sake of mystery, guys, but to prevent the collapse of our entire organizational structure.
Which leads us to our final point. The cycle resets. The snake eats its tail.
So, the crucial point is that this final assassination connects directly back to the Ouroboros title of the entire project. We really need to understand the recurring failure patterns in our containment history. Think about the progression we just covered. We start with the children, a weaponized youth, ultimately buried. We escalate to the broken god, a mechanical monster that requires a whole other anomaly just to be destroyed. We leap to atonement, a multiversal singularity whose hidden plan threatens our leadership. And finally, the way it ends, where targeted assassinations force the timeline to completely reset. Each escalating anomaly inevitably highlights a different vulnerability in the Foundation structure, leading straight to the ultimate reset of the specific universe. It's essentially a procedural review of our own hubris.
I want to leave you with this final, rather heavy thought as we conclude today's explainer. If dismantling and destroying the Foundation only ever results in the creation of a new one, is the cycle of destruction truly inescapable? Is the very act of containment itself an anomaly that the universe is constantly trying and failing to correct? I really want you to think about the tragic, infinite loop of DJ Cactus's incredible narrative design as you return to your sectors today. Maintain your discipline, remember your containment protocols, and please keep these files strictly confidential. Class dismissed.